Bonjour. Hello. So I just want to share with you something today. God said in His Word that He has prepared us for all the good works He has prepared for us to do to His glory. Now, I want to challenge you. I don't know whether you think, well, what kind of good works? Maybe I'm not qualified. Maybe I don't have this or that. How can I start? And I want to give you an example, personal example of my grandma. Now, I was raised partly by my grandma when I was very young. I stayed with her, and then afterwards, until I basically left the country, I was with her every long back. And that lady was born in 1882. She only did primary school because at that time girls were not going to secondary. And she attended primary school and then was trained to be a good housewife, to be a good homemaker. She learned how to sing, she learned how to play piano. She was gifted in many ways. But then she married, and she would have liked to pursue a career of public singer, but it was frowned upon, and the husband didn't want that. Instead, he registered both of them to the local library. And every week he was taking her to the library when they were young, and he was teaching her and giving her an opportunity to discover literature. And current literature those days were 19th century, poets in particular. And she read all of them, and she gobbled them with pleasure, with joy, with delight. And when she became a grandma, and I was her first grandchild, and she took me under her arms, and every day when I was very, very tiny, before I could even remember, she started reading me all those poets. In fact, she was not even reading them, she had memorized them, and she was reciting that thing to me with delight. And I learned from her to appreciate poetry. She bought a very little book to me when I was 4. There is still the date on it. And when I was just learning how to write. So I grew, I scribbled on the book even. And those were tiny, tiny pieces of poetry from various poets on every day, the cat, the garden, the rain, little things. And they were not more than 6 lines. And she made me learn them by heart. I used to recite them. They became part of my life, just like breathing. I was breathing poetry. And then she invented, as I grew up, she invented other activities completely free of charge. It didn't cost her except a stamp or two. She started writing to the tourist office in various places in France, but also in various other countries. And she was saying in the letter, please, we are interested in visiting your country. We want to go to so town. Please, could you give us different, information? And they would send maps, information for tourists, travel, and we would open that on the dining table, read them together, study the maps, and it was like a geography lesson. So many times, so many countries I discovered, and our dream was to go to a cruise on a very well-known ship. Of course, it never happened. But she was doing more than that. She was traveling in imagination and taking me with her, And even at night, we used to play in the bed, let's go to so town. And there was a particular town that had a magic name that was called Carcassonne. And she was telling me, let's go to Carcassonne. So we jump in the bed and say, we have entered the plane, we have a smooth ride, land at Carcassonne Airport that never existed, and then visit the town. But the main thing was to discover the town from afar with the walls, because it's a walled town. So it was magic, and I learned how to love geography and travel. And then she made me discover Africa. Funnily, because she never had anything to do with Africa, she never met any African. So, but she took me to the fair, the annual fair of the town, and then went straight to the missionaries' kiosk that were selling artifacts and little books for children. And she used to buy me books one after the other, and they were talking about Benin Republic. And I read those things. I still remember the stories. And I don't know why she did that, but she planted into me roots of Africa. African roots that eventually blossomed when I married a Nigerian. So it was strange. All this she instilled into me. She also made me learn about reading and being quiet. She instilled in me the love for flowers, because she had planted flowers in our garden that were so beautiful, and she watered them, and I accompanied her to do this. These are just some of the things. Because she was a musician, she also introduced me to music. Every week she had a meeting with a violinist, a lady, and both of them were playing together. So she was playing piano, the violinist was by her side, accompanying her, and it was magic. And I was sitting in my little tiny chair, and I opened the door of the lounge, and when the door was opening, it was closing that little corner where I was. So I was completely encased in it, listening to music, and I was closing my eyes and being bathed in those sounds. It was so precious. And I started loving music. And when we traveled together on holiday with my grandfather, then they went to concerts, usually classical concerts, and I was listening for hours and hours, and gradually I learned more type of, I discovered other types of music. My uncle in those days was not yet married, and he had a room in their house, and in that room he used to play jazz, and I used to go there, sitting there when he was not there, and listening to that jazz music. It was so marvelous. So those are some of the things. She taught me how to exercise. She was taking me to the park, discovering the animals, walking about, and she even paid for me to rent a bike when I was tiny, and it was just by the side of the park, and I would be zooming around, and she would sit on a chair knitting or looking at me until the time for the rent expired. And I learned how to cycle with her. So all this and more she was doing for me. And above all, she introduced me to the love of Jesus Christ. She taught me about Jesus. She was a Catholic. She never read the Bible. She only knew the New Testament, and she gave it to me. And she used to read me the Passion of Christ and saying, see how he suffered for you. He really loves you. She was spending all her days praying, and she taught me the value and the precious time of prayer. So if she could do all this at the age of virtually 70 and teaching me all this while she never went further than primary school, and nobody taught her how to pass on this, she did it out of love. And I challenge you, whether you are a parent or a grandparent, don't miss this precious opportunity you have with your children, your grandchildren, and sharing everything you know, everything you love with them. Don't spoil their life, enrich it, and it will be well with you.